This comprehensive ranking measures a wide range of factors, including economic output, military prowess, technological innovation, and reserve currency status, to evaluate the leading top 10 countries today and their prospects over the next decade. 6 additional measures of power, including infrastructure, investment, governance, and rule of law, are also assessed. The index takes into account each nation's level of happiness and health too. Based on all these elements, a total strength gauge score of between 0 and 1 is then awarded, along with a per capita or per person score. 10th strongest, Russia, strength gauge score 0.26. Russia is rich in natural resources and has a relatively strong military. However, the country's internal conflicts, insignificance as a global financial center, rampant corruption, poor infrastructure, and lack of investment are major cons. Its illegal invasion of Ukraine has severely damaged the domestic economy and Russia's international standing. Russia's real growth forecast for the next 10 years stands at 2.9%. On number 9, strongest country in the world. In 2025, we have France, with a strength gauge score of 0.27. France's global power is limited due to its less than favorable economic financial position. On top of this, the workforce is expensive, offering relatively little value. Positives include the country's social well-being, exceptional healthcare system, and the comparatively narrow gap between rich and poor, France's future growth prospects. Over the next 10 years, France is expected to record real growth of 0.9%, considerably lower than the global average, but nothing particularly special for a European economy. In terms of strengths, France scores well for its level of bureaucracy and rule of law. But the country has plenty of headwinds to contend with, most notably its high debt levels and issues surrounding the productivity of its workforce. On number 8 strongest country in the world, in 2025, we have the United Kingdom with a strength gauge score of 0.29. A global power on a flat trajectory, the UK has a strength gauge score of 0.29 and a per capita rating of 0.46, which beats the Eurozone average but trails that of Switzerland. Stumbling blocks to the UK's superpower status are its unfavorable economic financial position, paucity of natural resources, and comparatively expensive labor, coupled with poor infrastructure resulting from years of underinvestment. However, the UK is rated highly for health and has the best happiness rating according to the index, though this doesn't tally with many alternative surveys, which rate Britain's quality of life comparatively poorly. Looking ahead, the UK's real growth rate over the next 10 years is projected at 1.3%, which is below the global average but higher than the prediction for the Eurozone. On number 7 strongest country in the world, in 2025, we have India with a strength gauge score of 0.3. A power in ascent, India's strength gauge score is slightly higher than the UK's at 0.3, but its per capita score is at 0.07. India's standout strengths include its resilient economy and financial stability, cost-competitive labor force, and its people's self-reliance. However, the world's most populous nation has many limitations to overcome, including its rudimentary innovation and technological reach, widespread corruption, inconsistent rule of law, and lack of reserve currency status. Additionally, the wide gap between rich and poor presents a major hurdle. Fortunately, India's real growth forecast over the next 10 years is the best in the index at a stellar 6.3%. The country's high levels of investment and the industriousness of its workforce are its major pluses. Number 6 position, we have South Korea, with a strength gauge score of 0.32. Another middle-of-the-pack power in ascent, though on a slower trajectory than India, South Korea has a strength gauge score of 0.32, with a per capita rating of 0.54. The nation is a global leader in terms of technology and innovation. Other pros range from its low debt burden to its wealth equality. Limitations include the comparatively small size of the South Korean economy, the country's relative scarcity of natural resources, and its lack of reserve currency status. South Korea's future growth prospects over the next 10 years are expected to come in at 1.9%, which is around the global average but impressive for a developed economy. South Korea's main strength is its high level of innovation, along with its highly educated workforce. Meanwhile, the nation's weakness is its shrinking workforce, with the population aging faster than many other countries. On the fifth position, we have Japan, with a strength gauge score of 0.33. Japan has a strength gauge score of 0.33 and a per capita rating of 0.40, making it a middle-of-the-pack power, though it's technically in decline rather than ascent. Highlighted assets include the nation's high internal order, effective allocation of labor and capital, and reserve currency status. Other strengths include its narrow wealth gap and the country's modestly high happiness and health ratings. Conversely, Japan's overriding weakness is its lack of natural resources. Japan's real growth rate projection over the next 10 years is 1.2%. While this is below the global average, the figure is impressive given Japan's average figure for the past decade was just 0.8%. The country's key growth drivers will be the value its workers provide relative to their educational attainment and its level of bureaucracy. On the fourth position, we have Germany, with a strength gauge score of 0.38. Germany has a strength gauge score of 0.38, though its per capita score is much higher at 0.54. Of the European countries in the index, only the Netherlands and Switzerland are rated better by this metric. Germany's major positive is its efficient allocation of labor and capital. Other attributes include the nation's top-notch health indicators. Its key negatives are the country's relative shortage of natural resources, its weak military, and its costly labor force. Germany's growth prospects over the next 10 years are looking lackluster. The country is expected to experience negative growth at negative 0.5%. This is primarily due to the nation's shrinking workforce, which is expected to decline by 1.1%. Last year, German Economy Minister Robert Habeck identified this as the country's biggest impediment to growth, declaring that Germany lacks hands and minds as a consequence of an aging population. On the third position, we have the Eurozone, with a strength gauge score of 0.56. The Eurozone is classed as a strong power in gradual decline. Its strength gauge score is 0.56, while the 20 European Union member states that use the euro as their currency have a combined per capita score of 0.43. The Eurozone's key strengths include its robust financial markets, reserve currency status, prominent role in global trade, substantial economic output, well-developed infrastructure, and highly educated workforce. However, its challenges lie in its comparatively high labor costs and lack of natural resources. The Eurozone's real growth prediction over the next 10 years is 0.2%, considerably below the global average. The number is higher than that of its powerhouse economy, Germany, but lower than some of the more economically dynamic countries in the grouping, such as the Netherlands. On the second position, we have China, with a strength gauge score of 0.8. With a strength gauge score of 0.8 and per capita rating of 0.3, China is deemed a strong power in rapid ascent, though its trajectory has been flatter over the past 3 years. The country's strengths are its infrastructure and investment levels, its status as the global trade leader, innovation, technological skills, high level of education, and substantial economic output. China's growing military might is a key attribute too. However, the nation's importance to world trade, reserve currency status, and standing as a financial center have leveled out in recent years. China's real growth rate projection for the next 10 years is a remarkable 4%, though several other developing economies are expected to record higher growth rates. Rising debt will likely present an obstacle to growth, while factors such as increased levels of investment and improving productivity will drive the nation's ongoing economic expansion. At the first position, we have the United States of America, with a strength gauge score of 0.89. The U.S. boasts a strength gauge score of 0.89 and per capita figure of 0.79, affirming the nation's status as the world's foremost power. America is top dog thanks to its formidable capital markets and status as a financial center, its unrivaled military, which dwarfs that of every other country, the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency, the nation's peerless economic output, its high level of education, brilliance in innovation, and wealth of natural resources. The key negatives, according to the index, are the country's unfavorable economic financial position and its domestic conflicts. Over the next 10 years, the U.S. is expected to record real growth of 1.4%. Although the figure is below the global average, it's strong for a developed country. Again, high levels of debt and monetary policy are major threats to growth. In contrast, America's innovation, commercialism, and extra-sophisticated level of bureaucracy are the primary advantages that will turbocharge its future economic development.